Dvandvatitam gaganasadrisham tattamasya ekam nityam vimalamachalam sarvadi sakshibhutam bhavatitam trigurarahitam satgurutam namami. Nithyanandam, welcome to Nithyananda Leelas, coming to you from a new location, Uttara Halli, which is the location of one of Swamiji's next upcoming temples. I'm seated here in front of a beautiful Nityanandeswara temple with his murti, which just arrived here in August. He gifted it to this beautiful piece of land that was donated to him. Uttara Halli is a beautiful village by a lake, and it's sort of been surrounded by Bangalore, but you can definitely tell that it's its own magical creature. And this is the site of an upcoming temple for Swamiji, so stay tuned. Right now, a number of us disciples are living here, starting to get it prepared, do the work that needs to be done. And as soon as I landed here, I just was flooded by the story of Swami Vivekananda when he first started a mission after Ramakrishna's death, and how he and a few handful of disciples just found an old abandoned building and started working on it. So here we are, living the sannyas life, and I still get to do the show live, but as you can see, it's a very interesting setup. It's coming to you live from my laptop to Nityananda TV. And today, the Leela that I wanted to share with everyone is one that's been much speculated about, and one that has a lot of mystique and intrigue around it. And that's the Leela of the Ujjain Kumbh Mela. It was a sight to behold, and it was an otherworldly experience. The Ujjain Kumbh Mela was something that happens once every 300 years. Normally, the Kumbh Melas happen on a 12-year cycle. Every 3 years, the Kumbh Mela moves to another city, and there's 4 cities. So it goes every 3 years. It goes to one of those 4, and it takes 12 years to go through all of them. However, I was initiated as a Karma Brahmacharya just a year ago, September, at the Nasik Kumbh Mela, which was the regularly scheduled one. And then because of the way the planets were swirling and all these other magical events, again in May, the Ujjain Kumbh Mela hit. And this one is considered a very auspicious one, a very powerful one. And Swamiji said that it was also a signal that we had come to the end of that 12-12-12 shift. Some of you have watched the video on YouTube in 2010 when he was asked by people, is the world going to end on December 12th, 2012? And he said, no. What's happening is the frequency is going to start rising, that this massive tidal wave of energy will hit the planet. And it won't be apocalyptic unless that's the way you've lived your life. He said each person's experience of this frequency shift will depend on how they have lived. So if you've aligned with spiritual teachings, cosmos, divine, if you're under the protection of a guru or an avatar, as we are, he said, then you will ride this wave and experience bliss. If you've been just sort of in a negative spiral and backstabbing, money grabbing, self-centered, he said, this will be hell on earth for you. And he said, if you want to invest in anything in the market, invest in depression drugs, because that's what people will be experiencing, depression and anxiety. And sure enough, from 2012 till now, that's what I've witnessed the most, is not another world war, not anything we might have thought would happen, but just massive depression and anxiety. And so what Swamiji wanted to do to try and get as many people on board as he physically could, first he announced we were going to be assembling a camp at the Ujjain Kumbh Mela the way we did in Nasik. And then an epiphany hit him, and he said, I'm going to make it free, and I'm going to open it to anyone in the world. And it was just a mind-blowing offer. And when I was in Ujjain, we were there for almost a month ahead of time setting up this massive camp for thousands of people. It was the biggest camp there. Most gurus set up a camp in a tent and maybe have a couple dozen or a couple of hundred devotees come. But this was massive. This was, I think it was 5 dorm rooms, a massive tent that was just the cooking, and we were giving free food year round, or year round, all day, every day, to anyone who came. And it didn't matter what your religion was, what your beliefs were. If you came and you were hungry, you were fed. And this is one of the traditions of the Kumbh Mela. 70 million people appear, and nobody has to buy food. All the big camps, all the huge religious leaders and gurus of the Sanatana Hindu Dharma, that's part of the tradition, is to offer free food. And in our case, we were also able to provide free medical care. And so we had a medical camp going all day, every day. So all of a sudden, Swamiji, His Holiness Paramahamsa Nithyananda, accumulated this massive gathering of people from all over the world. And it was amazing just going and eating one of the meals with these people, because there were kids with spiked hair and pierced noses and tattoos who just heard about it and came. They thought, I'm a seeker, let's see what this is about. And there were followers who'd been with Swamiji for 10 years. There were old people, young people, everybody was welcome. And what he did was, the actual Kumbh Mela began in May. But he said, for those of you coming who've never been around me before, I want to do some energy processes with you so you won't lag behind the others when the big initiations hit. And that was the second part of this astonishing offer. Just the beginning of this journey of Kumbh Mela in Ujjain. When he said he would gift these powers, a lot of people who are traditional Hindus were wondering how he can do this. And I'm sure some of the other gurus and teachers were thinking, this is usually reserved for sannyasis. This is usually reserved for people who have sworn their allegiance to a guru and are doing penance and tapas and are walking that walk. And here he was offering it to anyone from the hairdresser, to the circus performer, to the construction worker. And when that went through my mind, I realized that's why he's asking them to help work. That's why he's asking people to help set up the camp, take part in the chores. Like, everyone became part of a team, cleaning the bathrooms or doing security or helping in the kitchen. There was seva involved. And the people who didn't get that left. I guess they thought they were just being offered a free vacation, and when that didn't happen, they left. But it reminded me of the story of the ultimate, Shiva and Parvati, that unbelievable romance. And when she realized that she wanted to marry Shiva, she had to do extreme penance, tapas, to prove herself worthy of him. And I believe it went for 2 years. She endured physical hardships, mental challenges, everything that we went through in Ujjain. I thought to myself, this is what Shiva did to Parvati. That you have to prove that you're worthy. You have to prove that you're not just some, I'll pluck this from here and from this guru, and just give me as much free stuff as you can, and then I'm going to go on my way. There was contract in place, and it didn't become apparent to a lot of people, but some people who were brand new to Swamiji got it instantly. They thought, he wants me to do some heavy labor in exchange for 70 powers, I'm in. And the enthusiasm of these people was amazing because their energy never flagged. They helped no matter what. And as all of this got put into place, then the game went up. The stakes went even higher. And just when I thought it couldn't be any more, we were hit with a massive storm. And I remember getting to internet that was still working and checking the forecast. And the forecast was clear sunny skies for days. Like, don't you worry, don't even bring an umbrella. It's just going to be sunny and hot and classic Ujjain. Well, a torrential downpour hit. And so many of us had this funny feeling that Swamiji was behind it because it made everybody step it up. All of a sudden, we were bailing water out of the halls and things were floating away and roofs were coming off. It was just this massive hit. And what it did is some people left. Some people just thought, I've had enough. And other people, they just were exhilarated by it. And it was like, I can help. I can do this. I've been in these situations. And everyone just, we managed to bail things out, dry things out, and boom, everything got back to normal. We were going to the royal baths, the snans down at the river, which is a huge part of the Kumbh Mela, is when the Kumbh pot is ceremonially sunk into the river. In this case, it's the Shikra River in Ujjain. And this is the location where Krishna was schooled. This is where his Gurukul was. So it's a very sacred city. And as soon as that Kumbh pot goes into the river, cosmic energy hits with a huge force. And you can feel it when you follow the avatar into that river. It's nectar. It's no longer just water, it's nectar. And scientists are doing studies on this water, on the difference between water that pre and post Kumbh Mela. So all of that was going on. We were still doing the ceremonies. 100,000 people were coming to the camp a day. The police were all called to our camp to try and manage the traffic and just the massive crowds that were going on. And so in the middle of this massive storm hit. And it was so interesting seeing people just take care of business. We were up and running the next day. Ready, doors open, gates open, 100,000 visitors came in, and we heard that a lot of the camps collapsed in that first storm. Just the rain, the tents or whatever structures they'd put up weren't enough. And so they just sort of packed themselves up and left and thought, okay, well, that's enough for Kumbh Mela this year. Our camp just bounced back. New forces came into play. Men started putting down interlocking brick so that the muddy areas that we had between the main hall and the dorms and the washrooms, all of these had been dirt, so they turned into mud. And these men just got out and started working and did this beautiful interlocking brick that went everywhere you needed to go. So now you were above the water and the mud, which dried out very quickly. And the processes started. The techniques and the energy darshans were happening in the main hall. And so for the participants, they were with Swamiji during the day. And then at night, he had open darshan for the crowds. And the crowds were unbelievable. And the first time they came into the main hall, I was one of the women on the ladies' side to just sort of gently go, you can just go this way. And that's not what happened. It was like, I'm telling my age here, but it was like Beatlemania. They pushed into us so hard, I almost flipped into the tech pit in front of the stage. And one of the men finally came through with a huge train. He just started moving like a barricade, and it just gave everyone the idea, oh, okay, we got to get in order. And after that first night, we got way smarter about crowd control. And these 100,000 people were able to come for dinner, go see the beautiful temple that he set up, a massive temple with 89 deities. And every day the Gurukul students who were completely in charge of it, they were doing all the homas, the rituals, the artis. It was spectacular what they set up there and maintained through the whole course of the Kumbh Mela. So there was an energy in there, healings all day, every day. And then the crowd would come in and get darshan from Swamiji. So he just lit up that Kumbh Mela. And so the general population was getting all this. Our population was, being initiated and having the, as he says, peeling the layers off the onion. All these processes were starting to reveal things to people. Some people were getting sick as they purged themselves of these toxins. Our medical team was on it, handing out electrolytes, getting people balanced, getting them cooled down. And then the cyclone hit. And there's an eyewitness account. Otherwise, this might have just been an urban legend, but there was an eyewitness account of one of the processes had finished in the hall and everyone had left, probably for a meal. And one person had remained in the hall cleaning up something and saw Swamiji walk in, sort of take a look around, and then make a gesture. And with that gesture, I'm not even going to say what it was because there's alchemy involved here, a massive cyclone hit. And this was apocalyptic, this cyclone. And it was a giant whirlwind. And it immediately, I was in the temple. I was doing healings in the temple. And all of a sudden the roof tore off in the center part above all the Homa pits. So the main entry was fine, and all the main deities were fine. It was just in front of the Homa pits. The whole ceiling flew off. It was like watching Wizard of Oz or something. It just took that off. And so immediately the Gurukul got everybody out, just started moving everyone as fast as they could. And I was absolutely transfixed because there was something so otherworldly about this. I couldn't move, and I was standing probably 40 feet, say 15 meters from this cyclone, from this open area, and all of a sudden this whirlwind came down dropped into the middle of the temple. And it's spinning, and the way the sunlight hit it, it turned gold. And I just held onto the little sort of railing inside and stared at it, and I felt there was something there. There was just something beyond words happening. And we didn't see it at the time, but later when we cleaned up, we realized that it had taken sacred leaves off this one tree that was specifically outside of our place and whipped them onto the main big Shiva Lingam, which was another 10 meters away from it. So the cyclone dropped down here and then just started boing, boing, sending these leaves off, and they landed on the Shiva Lingam. And we found that when we were cleaning up the next morning. It's just this offering on the Shiva Lingam by this whirlwind. And no one was hurt, but what happened was massive incompletions were resolved. A lot of people who had come to that, like any of these programs of Swamiji's Inner Awakening, a lot of them are suffering post-traumatic stress. They've dealt with a trauma in life that they cannot shake themselves clear of. And these incompletions embed themselves into your muscle memory, and they will create immense pain, and they will create terminal diseases if you don't take care of them. And so that's the focus of Swamiji's teachings, is complete. Like every day you should be doing completions. You should do completions if you yelled at your spouse or had a rough day at work. Like every day needs to be complete, or it builds and builds and builds until it's just this monument. So some of these incompletions, though, are so painful that we bury them very deep. And the sharing that happened after this cyclone was immense. We all got to work again, putting the place back together, and by then we had it down, right? We knew how to bail out the water, and we knew how to dry out the mats and where to go and who does what. Like everyone really kicked into high gear and was kind of excited that there was this team in place that knew how to behave. And the completions I heard were astonishing. There was one participant who had survived the Twin Towers coming down in New York, 9/11. And nothing had happened to revisit that event. It had been buried very deep sadly, in the muscle memory, probably in the biomemory. So it could have been a very catastrophic event to be carrying around in the body. And what happened was the noise, like when these, we had sheet metal on the very top of the temple, and when that shot off, it started hitting the sides of some of the other buildings, and there was very loud booming noises that you would hear in a war or in a building coming down. And what it did is that whole event was completely relived in this participant and was completed. They were able to walk out of it because they were under the energy shield of an avatar, and when you relive these events under his protection, they're healed, they're gone. So we had a 9/11 healing happen because of this cyclone, and the booming and the noise cacophony that was there was, some people thought it sounded like shotguns, and they had been in, gang territory in the States. Some of them thought it sounded, like just the weather conditions, and they had survived hurricanes, cyclones, different natural calamities. And again, it allowed it to come up in their system and leave. And there was one young lady there who, she was brand new to Swamiji and his teachings, and even to Hinduism. She didn't even follow this tradition. But she was a seeker, and her friends told her she better get there. This was a free offer, she better go. And I had a couple of conversations with her over tea where she was ready to pack her bags and leave. She said she just wasn't clicking with it. And when this happened, it turns out that she, just the style of work she had, she was constantly having to, tear down, move to the next city and set up, for the next location. And this was classic. She had erected massive tent structures and taken them down, put them up, tent them down. And she went flying by me when this cyclone was happening, and she looked enlightened, right? Her eyes were lit up, and she just was sparkling, and she's like, I got this. She says, I know how to do this. And she turned into this 80-pound ball of energy. And afterwards, she said she had a massive epiphany, that she realized she didn't need to be a worker in life, that she was actually leadership material, and that she was going to stop being an employee, and she was going to start her own business and be in charge of these big events that she had normally been working at. She realized she had all the skills to run them. And so she bounded away from Kumbh Mela, reinvented, right? She completely reinvented herself because of this grand Leela Swamiji threw at us. And it's sad that some people just took it on surface level, didn't understand that it was a Leela, that it was a grand play, and it was being done specifically to them the way it was because of what it would open up in them. And, I had my moments there too where you're just sort of scratching your head and going, I don't know. But so much was happening between the heat and the parades and the Kumbh Mela energy and the cyclones, and I couldn't make anything of it anymore. And so I didn't. I realized it stopped my mind cold. And Swamiji had mentioned when we were going there that Kumbh Mela, you shouldn't be trying to do any thinking projects. You should be doing physical projects. And at the time, I had a thinking project that I was going to do there. And I ended up being on the temple team and then on the security team. And I realized that's all I could do. That's the only thing I could function at, because there was no brain in there anymore. There was no mind. I literally went from this place to that place and to help this person and get this done. And it became a thought-free zone. And all of us are like that. Like, we sort of walk by each other and give a goofy wave, because nobody knew what was happening to them. And it was beyond our comprehension. There was no context for this. I've traveled and I've hiked and I've been in weather, but there was nothing to compare this to. It was the grandest Leela of a master, I think, that I have ever experienced. And it might be in the grandest in recorded history, because it was on such a scale, at such an event. And through it all, there's, the royal baths, the snans going on. There was the Peshwari procession where he was officially welcomed into Ujjain. And this is a grand procession where all of the gurus are welcome. So it was a huge, huge procession, and we were at the very end because Swamiji is the Mahamandaleshwara of Mahanirvani Akada, which is the oldest Akada. Mahanirvani Akada, Nirvana, it's the one that initiated Buddha as a sannyas. So he was a sannyas with that Akada when he was going on his spiritual path. And since Swamiji is the head, we were the very last procession, and our group went for 2 kilometers. It started with the beautifully decorated horses, the elephants, all the participants, and they were saying that they would look back to try and see us disciples who were right around Swamiji's chariot. We were such a long procession that they would actually turn corners and never even saw us. We were so far back. And helicopters were flying overhead, dropping flowers on us. The people we walked by were dropping flowers on us, and there was intense heat going on. It was over 40. And people had set up little sprinklers that we could walk under and get cooled off. And believe me, I thought this Canadian head would explode. It's just natural combustion in that kind of temperature. But Swamiji said no one is going to be harmed by this heat. And sure enough, I just kept going 12 hours. I just was like the Energizer Bunny. I just kept going and made it all the way to the Mahanirvani tent at the end, where we got to see all of these gurus, all of these wandering sadhus, these people who dedicated their lives to seeking enlightenment. And I realized of all the conventions I've been in the world and all the conventions I've put on, I've never been so moved as that energy, that compassionate, loving energy that surrounds a crowd of spiritual seekers. When you're with people who have put aside everything else, are no longer attracted by bright, shiny objects, they're there to get to the end, to get to the finish line. There is such a gentleness and compassion, and I saw that everywhere. When we were walking to and from the river for the different events, I would catch the eye of gentlemen who were sitting up on the hill with their long dreadlocks, jettas they're called here, and just we'd bow to each other, and just this unbelievable feeling of, hey, you're okay, you're on the same path, glad I got to see you. It's just immense. And 70 million people, and I never felt overwhelmed by the crowds. I never felt like I was not going to get something I thought I deserved. The food was there, the water and the tea, and everywhere we moved, you just move as this gentle wave. No one was trying to do anything goofy, like, if you were at the Calgary Stampede, which is my point of reference is a rodeo. The crowd control was immense, and other than the over-enthusiastic group, the first night of darshan around Swamiji, and I realized it was just because they could see him and they were just trying to fly to him. They just wanted to walk over any body that was between them and him. And so once people realized that no matter where you were, he would stay put until everybody was seen, until everybody had a chance to meet him and be blessed by him. So that was the Grand Leela of Swamiji at the Ujjain Kumbh Mela 2016. And if you missed it, the next time he invites you to a Kumbh Mela, you better get there, because it is the initiation of a lifetime, and you will never be the same. You will meet yourself there. You'll be confronted by your flaws. You'll be hammered in the head by your incompletions, and you will emerge reinvented. You will find yourself a kinder, gentler person, and it's worth it. That's why we're here. That's why we landed on this planet, was to find these things. So thank you for joining me on Nithyananda Leelas from the new location, and tune in tomorrow. Thank you for coming. I'll close with the peace mantra, the Purna mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamadachyate Purnaccha Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Satguru Parka Paramastu. Om Nithyanandam